Assalamualaikum and good day to our lecturer, Miss Aina. My name is Hani Loriana. On behalf of my Group 2, today we will be presenting our insight for the both statements, Statement 1 and Statement 2 for this group assignment. Stay tuned.
So the fundamental point that John must understand is that once incorporated JAM Enterprise Neighborhood is considered a legal person entirely distinct from himself and Maria. This is not just a formality, it has very real consequences. Firstly, the shop is no longer his personal property. The moment it was sold to the company, it became an asset on the company's balance sheet. Therefore, John and Maria are not the direct owner of the shop. Instead, they are the controllers, the directors and the shareholders of the separate legal entity that owns it. And finally, a key benefit for them is that this principle acts as a shield, protecting their personal assets like their home or savings from any debts or liabilities incurred by the company itself. However, this brings us to the exception, which is the concept of lifting corporate veil. This is a legal principle that allows a court to look past the company's separate identity and hold its owner personally responsible. A court can pierce the corporate veil if it finds that the company structure is being used as a sham to commit fraud, deceive people, or avoid a pre-existing legal duty. In John's case, this is a significant risk. Maria's stated intention to use the company to avoid the sale to Ahmad could easily be viewed by a court as an improper purpose and potentially even fraud. If Ahmad can prove this was the reason for forming the company, a judge could ignore JM Enterprises' separate status entirely and hold both John and Maria personally liable for breaching the agreement. The legal foundation for our advice comes from several key sources. The first one is the Companies Act 2060. It's the primary thing that established a company as a distinct legal person separate from its director and shareholders. This principle was famously cemented in the landmark of 1897 case of Solomon vs. Solomon and Co. Limited, which is the cornerstone of modern corporate law. Finally, the concept of lifting the corporate veil is a well-established judicial exception applied in cases of fraud or improper conduct injuring the legal structure. Is used for John faced a situation with two sides. On one hand, the principle of separate legal entities successfully protect JM Enterprises as the new legal owner of the shop, shielding it from his personal agreement with Ahmad. On the other hand, the concept of lifting the corporate veil presents as a serious risk. If their actions are found to be a fraudulent attempt to avoid the sale, John and Maria could be held personally accountable, undermining the very protection they sought. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shaza Rehana, and today I will be presenting on question 1B, which is to advise Ahmad on his likelihood of success if he still wants to join John's shop. I will explain the background, legal issues, relevant laws, analysis, remedies, and also conclusion. So for the case background, in this case, John at first already agreed to sell his family shop to his close friend, which is Ahmad. This shows that there was interest and trust and consent between them, and Ahmad believed that he would soon become the owner of the shop. But the situation changed when John's wife, which is Maria, found out. She was unhappy because John made the decision without asking her or discussing with her, so she felt like it was unfair. Because of that, Maria pushed for another plan. She wanted to set up a new company called JM Enterprise in Neighborhood, where both she and John would be directors. After the company was formed, the shop was transferred into the name of the company instead of Ahmad. So this completely changed the ownership structure, because now the shop is no longer belong to John personally. As a result, Ahmad, who trusted the earlier agreement, ended up with nothing. So even though he was promised the shop, he could not get it because the ownership of the company had already been moved into JM Enterprise. So this creates the conflict that we will analyze further in the next slide. Legal issues. The first legal issue is whether the agreement between John and Ahmad can be considered a valid and enforceable contract under the Contract Act 1950, For a contract to be valid, it must include essential elements such as offer, acceptance, considerations, and intention to create legal relations. So in this case, John's promise to sell the shop shows an offer, and Ahmad's acceptance shows consent. However, the problem is whether this agreement is formally documented and whether Maria's objection affects its validity. So the second issue is about the transfer of the ownership to JM Enterprises Sdn Bhd under the Companies Act 2016, and a company is recognized as a separate legal entity. Once the shop is transferred to the company, it is no longer belongs to John personally. So this raises a question. Can Ahmad challenge the transfer and still claim ownership, or is his claim only against John personally? And the third issue relates to the remedies available to Ahmad. If the contract is enforceable, Ahmad might argue for a specific performance, meaning he wants to court to order John to complete the sale as originally promised. Alternatively, if ownership cannot be claimed because of the shop now belongs to JM Enterprises, Ahmad may instead pursue damages for breach of contract. So this means he may not get the shop, but he could receive financial compensation. So in short, the legal issues involve contract validity, so the impact of the company's separate legal personality, and what remedies are realistically available for. So the next one is relevant laws. So the Contracts Act 1950 provides the legal framework for enforceable agreements. The Companies Act 2016 states that a company has its own identity. The principle was confirmed by Solomon v. Solomon, where the court held that a company is separate from its owners. So in Malaysia, in this case of Tan Lai v. Muhammad bin Mahmud, also deals with enforceability of agreements involving the property. Next slide is analysis and remedies. Although John promised the shop to Ahmad, the ownership has now passed to JM Enterprises. Because a company is a separate legal entity, so Ahmad cannot simply demand the shop from it. His strongest legal path is to sue John for breach of contract. Courts may award damages, or in some cases, order specific performance requiring John to honor the original agreement. And the last one is the conclusion. To conclude, Ahmad cannot claim the shop directly from JM Enterprises because the company is a separate legal entity. However, he can sue John for breach of contract under the Act of 1950. His likelihood of success is moderate and depends on proving a valid agreement. The court may either award damages or grant a specific performance depending on the circumstances. And that is all from me. I will pass to the next presenter.
Good day everyone, my name is Hani Loriana and I will be presenting the statement to question 1 answer today. So I will be walking you through the legal analysis of the contract between Fajura and Zulripin. So under the Malaysian law, the absolute foundation of any valid contract is free consent. So as outlined in section 10 of the Contract Act 1950, if consent isn't freely given, the contract validity is compromised. So the law is very clear that consent is not free if it's result of pressure like coercion or deception like fraud. So in Pajura's situation, she agreed to purchase a 10 painting price 50K. But the circumstances surrounding this agreement are deeply problematic. Why? Because her consent was obtained through a direct trade and deliberate deception. Therefore, the legal position is firm, where the contract is fundamentally invalid and cannot be enforced against Fazura. My analysis revealed three powerful legal arguments that we can use to invalidate this contract. So we will look into each one in details. First, the issue of coercion. We'll examine whether Zulripin threat was a form of illegal pressure. Second, we will discuss the fraud. So his outright lies about the paintings provide another, even stronger basis to cancel the contract and seek compensation. The third, we have illegality. So we'll explore on how the very subject of the contract, the sale of counterfeit art, makes the entire agreement void from the start. Now, let's start with coercion. As we know, in Malaysia, the legal definition of coercion under Section 15 of the Contract Act is very specific. It includes threatening to commit any act that is forbidden by the Penal Code. Zulripin threat to spread false rumors to ruin Bajra reputation falls squarely into this category. So this act is defined as a criminal defamation under section 499 of the Penal Code, and it is punishable crime because he used this illegal trade to force Bajra to sign. The law consider Bajra consent to be tainted. So the legal consequences under section 19 is that the contract becomes voidable. This means Bajra have the sole power to decide whether to affirm it or to cancel it completely. Next, we have the issue of fraud, which is perhaps the most clear-cut violation here, as we can see. Section 17 of the Contract Act defines fraud as any act intended to deceive someone into a contract. As we can read from the statement earlier, where Zulripin did this in two blatant ways. The first one, he lied about owning the paintings. The second, he lied about their authenticity, knowing that some were fakes. So this deception also make the contract voidable at Bajura opinion. However, fraud claims give Bajura a significant advantage. So it allows Bajura to pursue a remedy not just in contract law, but also in the thought of deceit. This means Bajura are entitled to not only rescind the contract and get her 50K back, but also to claim damage of any other financial losses that she suffered as a direct result of Zulripin fraudulent misrepresentation. The third issue is illegality, and it strikes at the very heart of the agreement. Section 24 of the Contract Act states that any agreement is void if its purpose is illegal. The purpose here was the sale of counterfeit painting, which is a criminal offense prohibited under several laws, including the Trademarks Act 2019. Unlike a voidable contract, an illegal contract is void ab initio, meaning it is considered as complete nullity from the very beginning as if it never existed. So this provides a very direct remedy called restitution. Under Section 66, the law obligates Zulrifin to restore any benefit he received under this void agreement, which means he must return Pajura 50K back. In conclusion, this contract is entirely unenforceable. Pajura are protected by three strong independent legal arguments as I stated earlier. So my recommendation strategy is to act decisively. First, we will send a formal written notice to Zulripin stating that Fazura are rescinding the contract on the ground of coercion and fraud. Second, in the same notice, we will demand the immediate and full repayment for the 50K. And if he refuses to comply, we are in an excellent position to initiate a legal proceeding. We will structure our lawsuit to claim for rescission and damage for fraud, while alternatively arguing that the contract is void for illegality, demanding the restitution. This multi-pronged approach ensures that we have the maximum leverage to achieve a full recovery for Fazra.
My name is Gunuratika. For question 2 part B, I will analyze the impact of Zoripin trees and the issue of ownership on whether the contract between him and Pajura is to start with under section 10 and section 14 of the Contract Act 1950. Both parties must give free consent for a contract to be valid. If consent is obtained through cheat, fraud, or misrepresentation, the contract becomes voidable under section 19. In this case, we have two major problems. Number one is Zoripin treated Pajura before signing, and number two is Zoripin did not own the paintings and some way counterfeit. Both of the issue affect the enforceability of the agreement. Next, I will go to the next slide. One is Zoripin treats. He told Pajura that if she did not sign, he will spread false rumors that could damage her reputation. This is a threat to commit an unlawful act under the Defamation Act 1957, which fall under coercion in Section 15 of the Contract Act 1950. Because Pajura signed out of fear, her consent was not freely given. According to Section 19, a contract made under coercion is voidable at the victim option. This situation is similar to the case of Barton versus Armstrong, 1976, where treats made the contract voidable, ownership and counterfeit painting. Zol promised 10 original painting, but in reality, he did not the words, and some turned out to be counterfeit. Under Section 14A of the Sale of Goods Act 1957, a seller must have the right to sell. Zol had no such right, and under Section 15, the goods must match their description. Counterfeit clearly do not. This amount to fraudulent misrepresentation under Section 17 of the Contract Act 1950. For example, in Rowell versus Devil, 1923, the court held that a buyer could recover the full price when the seller had no title. Similarly, in Malaysia, Tan Chu Chu versus Esther Minin and Mental, 1965, recognized restitutions for in conclusion, Zoripin treat amount to coercion, making Pajura consent invalid, and his lack of ownership and counterfeit word breach the Sale of Goods Act 1957 and amount to fraudulent mispresentation. Therefore, the agreement is vulnerable at Pajura option. She can resist the contract, recover the RM 50,000, reject the counterfeits, painting, and also claim damage for fraud or misrepresentation. That's all from me. Thank you.
That's all from our group. Let's all keep applying the appropriate legal principle to maintain the fairness and uphold the legal order within the business context. Thank you for your attention once again. Bye bye.